Hello, welcome to the Bigger Truth Show. I'm Scott McMahon, and uh, happy January 6th. And I fully recognize and acknowledge that for many people, this is a painful anniversary. And I think that the way that things went today with a very smooth outcome and process was, I hope, to some extent encouraging. And if you are someone who was victimized by our government on January 6th, because there were many who were. And what I'm going to talk about today is three people who I believe are and were at that time operators, whether they knew it or not. Is maybe it is possible that they just had, one tiny little compartmentalized role, and they were told to do something, and the why that they were given was something that they could feel good about, and they felt like they were doing something to help Trump and help this country. But so that is possible. It's very difficult to discern motive, and you've got to be able to have access to a lot of information and evidence to be able to discern motive. So I'm not going to, with the exception of the third character, I think his motive is pretty clear. He makes his motive very clear. So the three people that I'm going to look at today in this show, and I've got a ton of material to cover, so I'm just going to bust right into it. The three people that I'm going to cover are Caroline Wren, Jason Sullivan, and Ivan Raiklin. And each of these characters acted as an operator in on leading up to and during, and in some cases even after 2020, January 6th of 2021. And so let's look at what we got. We're going to start with Caroline Wren. And Caroline Wren, this picture of her, very cute, in the cornfield with Carrie Lake. Caroline Wren has been, and I believe that Carrie Lake is effectively done politically. And so I suspect that Caroline Wren has no use for Carrie Lake anymore. She's made millions off of Carrie Lake as both her fundraiser and her campaign manager and political consultant. So she was making, I was told, between 10 and 15% of all monies that came in as the fundraiser, and another 10 to 15% of all the money that was spent as the political consultant and doing the ad buys and stuff. So she did quite well for herself on Caroline Wren's or on Carrie Lake's campaigns. But the interesting thing, there's so many interesting things about Caroline Wren. She's very close with Steve Bannon. And, but she graduated from Auburn in, I think, 2008, 2009, Auburn University in Alabama. And then she went immediately and she worked in 2008, she took a semester off so that she could work on John McCain's presidential campaign. And then, what I understand is that she went back to work for McCain after she graduated, and she also worked for Lindsey Graham. And so from the time that she graduated in 2009 until 2016, she was working primarily for those two, McCain and Graham. She worked on Lindsey Graham's presidential campaign in 2016 when he was running against Trump in the primary. And there's the story about how she fell in, or how Carrie Lake really fell in with her, is another story. I've told it before, and it's on my Substack. If you look up Caroline Wren on my Substack, you'll find it. If you're a member, it's in the archives. And I think it's an important report that I did there, where I go pretty deeply into Caroline Wren's background. And I touched on some of the things that I'm going to share here. I do have some new information that I've learned fairly recently. about her and specifically on what happened at January 6th. So that's kind of what I'm going to share here briefly. So she raised, and she's at the center of January 6th because she raised $3 million to take over the planning of the stage at that became the stage at the Ellipse on January 6th. Now, she did not have the permit. She did not do the planning. She didn't get involved at all. The original permit was pulled by Cindy Chafian, who I've spoken to, and that permit was pulled in November of 2020. And it was a permit that was for multiple days, I think, like from the 4th through the 7th or something like that, which is typical because they would have time to set up and break down. And when she pulled the permit, it was for that, kind of a large area that included the Ellipse and Freedom Plaza. She only intended to use Freedom Plaza, though. She never wanted to do an event at the Ellipse because it's really expensive. Now she was working, she organized um this this is Freedom Plaza, and this event right here is one that she actually organized, that Cindy Chafian organized, along with Kylie and Amy Kramer, who founded I think it was the March for Trump, and which was kind of a parallel organization to stop the steal. And Goldie says, "Good evening, Scott. Feel better soon. Thank you." Yeah, I feel fine. I've been on the phone a bit, and I've been looking at the computer and just working all day trying to get ready for this. So thank you. I'm glad you guys are here. Um, so Kylie and Amy Kramer from Georgia, and I've kind of gotten into it a little bit, just a little bit with Kylie Kramer, uh, but on X, but they were running, I think it was Moms for America, or it was one of those. There's so many different mama bear organizations. It was one of those mama bear organizations that they started. And um and so they ran several of they were involved along with Stop the Steal in a lot of these rallies. And so Cindy Chafian got the permit for this rally, which was on December 14th, I believe, 12th or 14th. And this is Freedom Plaza. Now, as you can imagine, this location is not one that the president of the United States could ever do an outdoor speech at because there's so many rooftops. It's really impossible to secure. And um, so at this event, actually, President Trump came, but all he did is he kind of circled around did a drive by in his limo, and you could see him through the window, and he waved, but he wasn't allowed to open the window, I don't think either, by the Secret Service. But so it's kind of like a big deal that there was a drive by there. Thomas, welcome. Thank you for sharing. And so, yeah, so this event here at Freedom Plaza, this was in December, and this is kind of what Cindy planned to replicate on January 5th and 6th. Now, on the night of the 5th, there was an event here at Freedom Plaza, and this was a stage that she set up, and I believe that stage was going to be set up, that they didn't break it down on the night of the 5th. They were going to keep it up on the 6th, I believe. But the permit was actually taken away from her for the 6th, and in a very strange way, against the rules of the National Park Service, because the permit was in her name, and the permit was taken away from her and given to because the permit was in her name, not in the organization that the Kramers were running. It was in her name. But it was taken away from her just for the 6th and given to the Kramers. And it's possible for the 5th too, and she might have just worked on it for the 5th, but they kind of edged her out. And because she was never planning on holding it at the Ellipse, and this is the Ellipse. And the reason why she never wanted to hold it at the Ellipse, she didn't want to have an event that Trump would speak at. Like that's what she told me. She just didn't want to because it becomes so much more complex. You've got to have the Secret Service, but more than anything else, the cost is just so much greater. And she hadn't raised the funds. She was working with Alex Jones on this stage, uh, on this event, and she had not raised the funds because with the ellipse, as you can imagine, I mean, this is like park grounds here, right? And if you set up a big stage, you got thousands and thousands of people trampling on the grass, it's going to kill the grass. And so the cost of doing it at the ellipse is you've got to resod the ellipse if you damage the grounds, which is inevitable. So it's an extra hundreds of thousands of dollars to do it at the ellipse. And so she didn't want to do that. I want you to imagine for a moment what would have happened if it had not been held at the ellipse, if it had been held at Freedom Plaza like Cindy Chaffian was initially planning. And I have been told that the Kramers actually had a friendship with um, a certain member of the House at the time, the House, I think it was the Resources Committee, uh, major committee that oversees the Department of the Interior, and and also who became a member, coincidentally, of the January 6th committee. That would be Liz Cheney. So I have asked Kylie Kramer if she's friends with Liz Cheney, and or if her mom is, and she didn't want to respond, or that she didn't respond. So uh, I have been told that they had a friendship, and that there's some speculation that possibly Liz Cheney actually had a hand in getting the permit taken away from Cindy Chafin and handed to Caroline Wren and uh, the Kramers. Now that would be, if that's true, um, that would be a tremendous bombshell because it would show that Liz Cheney was actually, to a certain degree, investigating herself, that she had a hand in the planning of this. Because again, imagine if the event had been held at Freedom Plaza, where Trump couldn't speak, he wouldn't have spoken publicly. So, what do you think would have happened on January 6th had he not spoken publicly? I mean, he would not have told the people to, now we're going to go and peacefully and patriotically march to the Capitol, because he wouldn't have had that opportunity. They wouldn't have been able to link it all to Trump. But there were mountains moved. Oops, wrong way. There were mountains moved to get this to happen. And this was the event at the Ellipse. And, isn't it interesting? It's called the Save America March. Like, why the march? You know? And one of the things that the $3 million was, interestingly, a lot of that money was funneled through Turning Point. A lot of it, like the majority of it, like I think $2 million or something was funneled through Turning Point. But a lot of that money went to advertising the event in advance, robocalls and text messages across the country that were targeting people who would likely attend the event. And the messages went along the lines of, and make sure at 1 p.m. you're ready to march to the Capitol. And Trump, of course, was delayed in starting by almost an hour, and he didn't even finish speaking until about 1:15 or so. And so, but it's just really interesting. They call it the Save America March, right? Like they were planning this march, but I was there. I was here in this crowd. It was crazy line just to and process just to get through security to get into the Ellipse, which was, which I really wanted to do because there were bathrooms in there. There were no porta johns that I could find outside of the Ellipse. And so, yeah, I really wanted to get through security so that we could get in and use a restroom, because we'd taken a bus overnight to get there. So, yeah, so this event. Um, and I think that this is a really big deal because, and Caroline Wren, another thing that was interesting is, if you saw the documentary with Roger Stone, A Storm Foretold, in it Roger Stone was fully expecting, because you're following right along with Roger Stone, which is just fantastic. It's fascinating. And if you haven't watched it, highly, highly, highly recommend you watch that movie. If you're watching this podcast, that means you've got some interest in this piece of history, which is, I think, an extraordinarily important part of our history to understand. And I think very few people actually do understand what happened. And I don't fully understand what happened on January 6th. But it's not just January 6th, it's everything else that led up to it. Um, so the in that movie, you see Roger Stone fully expecting to speak. He actually believed that he was going to speak. And uh the accounts are, and this is public information. There's several different pieces that were written about this, that Caroline Wren was pushing so hard to get Roger Stone, Alex Jones, and Ali Akbar, and she talked about that in her J6 deposition as well. She was trying to get them on the stage with Trump on the ellipse. She was pushing so hard that the White House staff actually called the Capitol Police to remove Caroline Wren. Now, this is the person who had paid for the event, and the White House chief of staff, or the White House, not the chief of staff, but someone in, and I'm not sure who, but someone in the White House staff called the Park Police to remove Caroline Wren. She ended up leaving voluntarily. The police didn't remove her physically. She voluntarily left. She went and got Ali Akbar, or Ali Alexander, and or Alex Jones to start organizing a march to the Capitol at 1 o'clock while Trump was still talking. And an interesting tidbit, um, and this just came to mind. So I had it on the screen, but I don't think I have it up anymore. But I was reading the Caroline Wren's J6 deposition this morning, and she, they were asking her about that march. And so Alex Jones was going to march, and she asked Alex Jones, because Roger Stone was supposed to be there, but he got all mad and he threw a tantrum once he found out that he wasn't going to be speaking, and he went back up to his hotel room, and you see that in the video. So he's not there to march, and so he says, so she says, okay, well, Roger Stone's not here, so who do you want to have march with you? And his first answer was Flynn. He wanted General Flynn to march with him. And so she called General Flynn, and this is in the deposition. It's hilarious. She called General Flynn and said, hey, Alex Jones wants you to march with him to the Capitol. This will be a great scene. You want to do it? And his response, hell no, it's freezing outside. That's what she said. So I want to compare that. Actually, let me pull this up. This is Mike Flynn speaking at Freedom Plaza on January 5th, the night before.
You see these people up in their windows all over here, this place we call Washington, D.C. They have forgotten, Washington, D.C. has forgotten what it means to be an American patriot. They have forgotten who they work for. They work for we, the people. So when you think about your loved ones, you think about your mothers, your fathers, your grandfathers, your grandmothers, your aunts, uncles, all of those people that went before us, all of those people that fought for our country, all of the men and women that are standing in freedom space tonight around the world, willing to die, willing to sacrifice their very lives for the fresh air of liberty that we breathe.
So he's saying, everybody right now that's willing to sacrifice, we got to be ready tomorrow to sacrifice, even to die for this country, right? And then when it came time for him when he was asked to just go and march with Alex Jones to the Capitol, his response was, hell no, it's freezing. Oh, I think that's just funny. Of course, I highly doubt that the reason really it was the cold, right? He knew what was about to happen, and I don't think that he had any desire to implicate himself in that way, although there were pictures taken of him and Patrick Byrne and others, for one part of it actually walking. And Joe says, in Flynn's defense, January 6th, it was 40 degrees. Yes, I was there. It was cold. It was cold. I had several layers on. It wasn't warm at all. But there were hundreds of thousands of other people who were there. And Flynn could be out he got out for a photo op. So he was there for a photo op, but he didn't do the march with Alex Jones, according to Caroline Wren. Okay, so that is the Caroline Wren story, and I think it's pivotal. It is absolutely a critical element, because if it weren't for Caroline Wren and her raising the $3 million to take control over this stage, we'll get to Jason in a minute. If it weren't for Caroline Wren, then Trump wouldn't have spoken that day. And if Trump hadn't spoken that day, I think that what would have happened is that, there would have been some speeches at this event. This is what I was expecting when I went there, is that there were several stages all around, around the DC, in this area around the mall. And there's the one at Freedom Plaza, and then there's another one closer to the Capitol. And I was just figuring, okay, we'll go and listen to some talks and see what happens. There wasn't really that much of a plan. It was just kind of go and figure out where we're going to go. And so, I think that's what would have happened. And it would have been, yeah. Joe says I was being sarcastic. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it was 40, if it was 30, it felt cold, but it wasn't. I mean, it's all good. So, all right. So Caroline Wren. Now let's move on to Jason Sullivan. This is Jason Sullivan in the middle when he was deposed as part of the Mueller investigation, and I'm pretty sure that that's what this is. This is him with his attorneys going into his deposition with his Starbucks. So I'd have a taller cup of Starbucks if I were in that position personally, but I like my coffee. So Jason Sullivan, there's two things about Jason Sullivan that were really interesting leading up to January 6th. And the first that I'm going to share is it has to do with Ron Watkins and Jim Watkins. Now, this is Ron and Jim Watkins. Jim on the right is his father, and Ron on the left, he also goes by Code Monkey Z on X. This is Jim Watkins again on the left. This is on January 6th. He was there. And this is somebody who's alleged to be his friend, and I haven't been able to find much documentation of that. And this is Michael Aquino, who also is alleged to have been a mentor of Flynn and was an overt Satanist. He founded the Temple of Set, and he actually got kicked out of the Church of Satan in 1975. And he wrote, along with General Paul Vallely, a book called Mind War, about psyops and psychological warfare and how it is actually done. So if it is true that they are or were actually friends, because Michael Aquino died in 2019, that would explain quite a bit about Jim Watkins and Ron Watkins. But what's significant, really the only thing that is really significant about them, is that Jim Watkins purchased 8chan, and then it changed its name to 8kun. He was forced to in court. And 8kun or 8chan is where Q was posting. And so because of that, they had some level of control over, potentially or theoretically, over the security and whether or not Q posts even. I've been told that Q had the ability to work around them. I don't know how true that is. I just don't know. I'm a little skeptical of it, but yeah, I just don't know. So D says, how do, welcome. Natalie says, word up. And Aaron's Rod said, "Are they related? They have the same eyebrows." Yes, they are father and son. So Ron Watkins on the left is Jim Watkins' son. And again, here's another picture of Jim Watkins. He's so here, eyebrows don't do that on purpose or on accident, right? I mean, I think you got to wax them. And from what I understand, that's something that people that want to advertise that they're a member of the Church of Satan and their eyebrows grow long enough to do that, then that's something that they like to do, apparently. So I don't believe that Aquino and Jim Watkins are related, though. Yeah. So, all right. So I want to share this video right here. This is from a documentary called Q Into the Storm. And a lot of Q followers really don't like this documentary. However, there's a gold mine within this. It's a docu-series. There's a gold mine of interviews with the filmmaker had extended direct access with Ron and Jim Watkins. And so just from a historian's perspective, getting to know these characters, it's really a treasure trove. It's the only place that you can find interviews like, that anywhere like this with these two characters. And so in this video that I'm about to show, it's with Ron Watkins talking with the filmmaker about Jason Sullivan and a tool that Jason Sullivan made. And he actually he first did this in 2015, working with Roger Stone. And this is one of the things that Roger Stone had pitched to Trump's to President Trump to let him work on his campaign. He was fired very quickly. But in 2015, 2016, Jason Sullivan had developed a tool that used bots to drive engagement on Twitter. And so he could artificially and dramatically boost engagement. And he did the same thing in 2020, allegedly only for Ron Watkins. So here's the video.
Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of power now. I mean, almost every tweet that you're publishing now gets 10,000 or more retweets. So
yeah, you know that Sullivan guy, Jason Sullivan.
yeah,
He finally gave me access to that tool that he was showing last year.
If Q is trying to utilize or optimize abilities on Twitter, we can make them better.
I thought Twitter had like caught it and
No, he got banned from Twitter, so he had to rebuild it, and his rebuild is only being used by me now, and it's a super tool. Like, this tool is amazing. My account is the second most powerful Twitter account next to Trump.
You have the second most powerful Twitter account next to Trump right now?
When I'm tweeting, yes.
When you're tweeting.
So
okay, so that is, I think that's a significant thing, because he was really driving Code Monkey Z, and what Code Monkey Z was all about, 100%, everything he was tweeting about was machine fraud. And I've talked about this in the past, where I believe that they knew that they were going to cheat in the election with the mail-in ballots, and that the plan that Mark Elias and others, the Democrats, were doing was to, and all these far left NGOs that had access to the voter rolls, the plan was to cheat with the mail-in ballots, but to make sure that there would be, for the most part, a ballot for every vote. And so then they had this, they ran a psyop on Trump and the American public to convince us that the fraud was in the machines, so that and then they were also going to run an op and a series of ops on Trump to try to persuade him to invoke I think it was the 1806 Insurrection Act, which to declare that the election fraud was real and that it was an act of insurrection, and taking upon himself and granting himself the power of martial law, and also to direct the military to go into the 7 counties and the 7 swing states and confiscate the machines and the ballots and do their own hand count. And of course, the hand count would have shown that there was a ballot for every vote. It would have confirmed the tabulator count. It would have instantly been branded as an obvious military coup attempt And I think the vast majority of Americans would have agreed. And I think they would have sought treason against Trump. And we're going to get more into that in a minute. So, a part of January 6th is the machine fraud psyop. I think that that's an important part of January 6th because most of the people who were there believed the reason why they were there and the reason why I was there, frankly, is, we believed what we were told and what we could find online, and there's very limited. I mean, we all had very limited access to information, and most of it was coming through podcasters and the like that were connected to Flynn or to other operatives that were connected with the deep state, the CIA, DOJ, whatever. There's so many different operatives connected to our own military and our government, and they were really controlling our access to information. We thought that we were being independent. We thought that by going away from Fox News and away from the mainstream media that we were getting the true information. But really, I think we were getting information that was every bit as controlled anyways. And Twitter really contributed to that. But specifically, I think Jason Sullivan and what he was doing on Twitter, not just driving engagement there with Code Monkey Z, but this was on Trump as well. Trump was very much involved on X. That's where Trump was getting most of his information. Trump was retweeting Code Monkey Z, and Trump also retweeted Ivan Raiklin, who is going to be the next subject, and I'll get to him in a minute. But there's one other thing that Jason Sullivan did in the run-up to January 6th that is extremely, extremely significant. And that is on December 30th, he hosted a Zoom call. I think it was on Zoom. It was some sort of a conference call. And the groups, there were many different groups that were invited and that participated in that call. They included Proud Boys, Oath Keepers. There was a group that the New York Times and the Washington Post reported on. It was a Telegram or a Signal group that had about 50 members. I think there were 47 members in the group. Included Flynn, included Ivan Raiklin, a whole bunch of people. So the ones that were known were reported and listed. But there were some of the Proud Boys, a lot of different media people. It was it was kind of like this. It was called Friends of Roger Stone. And so that group was on there. There was, so the Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, First Amendment Praetorian was on there, which was kind of Flynn's private security militia. These are all special ops guys, former Eric Prince Blackwater people, led by a guy named Robert Patrick Lewis, who, interestingly enough, Robert Patrick Lewis, this is an interesting piece of trivia, was the chauffeur on December 18th. He's the one that drove Flynn, Patrick Byrne, and Sidney Powell. And I believe that Mike Lindell went also, but he was not allowed into the White House. He couldn't get in. So he was out in the Rose Garden, and he was holding up his phone and a piece of paper that talked about martial law and the military confiscating the ballots and all this. And the media just had a heyday over that. Just that deliberate leak there of information that he did. But the driver was Robert Patrick Lewis, from the founder of the First Amendment Praetorian. He drove them to the White House that day. And it was Garrett Ziegler that ended up getting them into the West Wing, which, if you think about it, is pretty crazy. I'm sure they had to get through Secret Service, but was Patrick Byrne. Everybody that I've talked to that has had direct experience with Patrick Byrne says that he's on drugs most of the time. Was he on drugs when he went into the West Wing of the White House? This is a major security breach in my view. And when Pat Cipollone, White House counsel, saw that they were there, he was just shocked. How in the world did these people get there? And Patrick Byrne, who the heck are you? He didn't know. He didn't say Patrick Byrne because he didn't know who he was. So that's December 18th, and the whole purpose of that December 18th event and visit by Flynn, Patrick Byrne, and Sidney Powell was to try to persuade Trump to invoking the Insurrection Act, and they were successful. Actually, Trump had verbally agreed to do it, and at least to appoint Sidney Powell as a special counsel. But Rudy Giuliani, from what I've been told, Rudy Giuliani and Pat Cipollone talked Trump out of it, and so he changed his mind, and he never gave Sidney Powell her office in the West Wing. Fortunately, because like I said, I really do believe that would have resulted in an indictment and charges of actual treason against Trump, and who knows? They could have sought a public hanging. Who knows? And it is treason is, and I really don't like something that I really don't like on the right that I see a lot is that a lot of people are just so quick to accuse others of treason. And that is an extremely, extremely serious charge, and we need to take that very seriously. And it is so serious that in the Constitution, it is treason is the only crime that has a named penalty in the Constitution, and that is hanging. And so that's where, that when they talk about, charging with treason, they're talking about it has the death penalty, and it actually says in the Constitution that it's public hanging is the penalty for treason. So it's a very serious charge. I think we need to be very careful to make accusations that are really supported by evidence. Now, are some people guilty of treason? Yes. Is it something that we should apply liberally? No. I think we need to be very careful and very selective about treason in particular. Okay. So now let's move on to Ivan Raiklin. This is Ivan Raiklin on January 6th with it looks like a Fight Like a Flynn mask. It looks just like the Fight Like a Flynn logo. It certainly says FLY, and that's right in the middle. It looks like an N. I'm certain that's a Flynn mask, face mask that he's wearing there, right in the middle. And he's got two walkie-talkies, right? So he's probably talking to the Proud Boys in one, talking to the Oath Keepers in another. And there we go with Ivan Raiklin just doing his thing on January 6th. Booma, so good to see you. He says, I've got pushback on the idea that Flynn tried to convince Trump into the Insurrection Act. It's insane trying to even converse with people on this. That is so well documented, and Patrick Byrne has actually acknowledged it, and it's in his book. So, if they are completely, if somebody says that didn't actually happen, it's complete BS. I mean, it is everywhere. Sidney Powell has said that. Patrick Byrne has said that. I'm sure Flynn has talked about it too. In fact, I'm pretty sure he talked about it on the January 5th interview with Alex Jones. It's everywhere, and it's all that is. I mean, that's a very well documented fact. So if they have a hard time accepting that, then they are just completely they're unwilling to consider evidence at all. Okay, so Ivan Raiklin, and I've got quite a bit that I want to cover with Ivan Raiklin. This is going to take a bit of time, so let's get in. So I shared this thing with Flynn the night before on January 5th, where he this video right here.
This is so important, people. We have got to get this right. And like I have told the President of the United States, this is not about him. This is about the presidency. This is about our Constitution. This is about our country.
Okay, so this is just the most serious thing in the whole world, right? And Booma, thank you. So yeah, man, it's just insane. I appreciate you too. So yeah, you're Booma, you're doing great work, and I applaud your courage in coming out publicly. And I enjoy your videos. You've got a great sense of humor, and a good eye visually. You're really good at what you do. So thanks. Okay, so it's pretty clear to me that this was a pep talk. I mean, this was like a coach giving, locker room talk, get out there and bust some heads, right? He's talking about being willing to die for your country the night before January 6th. And so some of the backdrop on this, and I have some recordings that I want to share first from Jason Sullivan on December 30th. And so this is a recording that Stacey Burke actually got the recording. And the reason is because First Amendment Praetorian had essentially kidnapped her in her own home. She's got multiple affidavits that attest to that they were there despite her continued protest and even attempts to escape. And they were fully armed. Each of them had at least 2 firearms on them at all times. And they did all kinds of gaslighting and manipulation. They stole her phone. Her phone ended up at the Willard Hotel, which was at Flynn's headquarters in DC. It was there for a few months before she finally got it back. When she got it back, it was missing some key files. She has well over 1,000 recordings from that time. And fortunately, much of it had been backed up. But what hadn't been backed up was some recordings actually with Flynn and some others. And so, it was, and so for 7 weeks, they were living in her own home. She spent over $3,000 feeding them and buying them alcohol during that time. And she thought that they were volunteering for security. That's what they were telling her. And it was just constant manipulation and gaslighting. So because they were on this call, she just recorded it on her phone, the audio of it. And so that's what this is.
Past victory, so to speak. Okay. I don't think we're going to go into a civil war. I don't believe that's going to happen. I don't believe our president is going to allow that to happen. Number one. So far, other countries are involved. To England, to Italy, to China, to Iran.
Okay, so again, this is nothing. So he's saying that England, Italy, China, and Iran were all involved in the election fraud. This is Jason Sullivan at the beginning of the recording, and I don't have that part of the recording on my computer. I have 2 sections of it. But at the beginning, what I've been told is that he said that he was there with Trump, and actually that was documented in the New York Times. I just wasn't able to get it in time for this. But he said that Trump had actually sent him on this call, and that Trump had endorsed this message. I think it was complete BS. And it was actually after the New York Times published this recording and the story about it, then it was found that Trump had not actually, there was no evidence at all that Trump had had any communication with Jason Sullivan at all about anything, let alone about this call. And again, on this call, you've got the militia organizations and you've got a ton of Flynn organizations. You've got the Friends of Roger Stone. You've got Latinos for Trump, which is a Flynn org. You've got Moms for America, Moms for Liberty, whatever, some of these mama bear orgs. And there were about a dozen different orgs, and they were all associated with either Flynn or they were a militia org, and that was involved in January 6th. So, and 1AP, the First Amendment Praetorian, was there, and that's how we got this recording.
Okay, we've got people in the Department of Defense that are researching every single breadcrumb trail, every single yellow brick road. They know where the money is. They follow the yellow brick road. These people are caught red-handed.
Military tribunals for truth type of stuff.
It is going to be wild. These people are implicated. And when they certify those states, they're certifying their crime. There needs to be pressure here. This is the red line. Okay, and everybody, I've heard that earlier in the call. This is the red line. So we absolutely positively need to put that pressure there where they feel it. And it may be having so much pressure that they do the right thing. Okay? And then maybe after that, some of those people won't be arrested. Okay? Because that's coming too. There's going to come a point, and it's going to be soon, and President Trump knows it has to be soon, because there are people, and I've heard dates, and I think Melissa, you mentioned a date, there's dates floating around with some of the people in the militia. Okay? They will not allow Biden to go into the White House. Okay? So do you think we're going to allow that to happen? No. There will be a limited form of martial law, which would, at that point, there.
So he's outright saying, and this is 1 week before January 6th, remember. So he's saying that there's going to be a limited foreign martial law. You kind of hear the 1AP guys saying in the background that there's going to be military tribunals and hangings.
No more playing games. We're telling you, you have a curfew, and you got to abide by it. Otherwise, you're going to get shot in the rear end. Okay, and they may be real bullets. Who knows? Okay, but he's not going to allow them to descend on all the cities and burn all.
So imagine, just put yourself in the position of the people that were on this call. And these are Proud Boys across the country. These are Oath Keepers, hundreds of people on this call, from what I understand. And these are people that are planning on going, and they believe that Trump has sent Jason Sullivan on this. This is a message from Trump, that Trump wants them to go there and to be ready to do this. That this is like a military operation. This is kind of the flavor of this whole thing.
Our city's down, for one. And the main reason for that is because if he did allow them to do that, our militia would step up and meet them with great force, and we would therefore find ourselves in a civil war. There's no question about that. Does anybody doubt that?
Nope.
Oh, no, that's what I'm afraid of. We are, yeah, and I applaud every single one of you who are on this call, because you are those people. We need a new type of patriot. Okay, there's a difference between Americans and citizens and patriots. Okay, patriots are the ones that will die for this country.
Need a new type of patriot. Patriots are the ones that will die for this country. So here's more of the same conference call from a different recording.
It's got to be a multiple front strategy, and that multiple front strategy, I do think, is descend on the Capitol.
Okay, so I know this might be really difficult to hear. So he's saying there needs, I'll stop at every sentence or so and repeat. So he says there needs to be a multiple front strategy to descend on the Capitol.
Without question, make those people feel it inside. Okay? So
you need to make those people feel it inside.
they understand that people are breathing down their neck, and we've had it, and they've got it, and we've got to be perfectly clear about it. Now, I'm not in.
So they have to understand that the people are going to be breathing down their necks, that we've had it, and we need to be perfectly clear about it.
Violence or any type of riots or anything like that, but we need to be loud.
So I'm not advocating for violence or any specific threats or anything like that. But just like Ivan Raiklin, right? He always says this could be peaceful, patriotic, and legal, moral, ethical. But then he talks about murdering people.
Be like Jericho, okay? We need to shout and scream to where the walls fall down at Capitol Hill.
It needs to be like Jericho. We need the shouts and screams of Jericho raining down on Capitol Hill.
That's what this optic needs to look like. And I can promise you, I can make that go so viral, so fast, across the globe.
And he says, I can make that. This is Jason Sullivan. I can make that go so viral, so fast across the globe. Yes, he can, because he has the bots. He's got the ability to influence social media. Even though he's not within the company, he's able to manipulate the algorithms with his tools that he's developed. So this is a big deal. This recording was a really, really big deal.
I know people, trust me, okay? And we know how to manipulate, drive the narrative by design. That's what we do. That's our core competency. That's our wheelhouse.
So he says his core competency, his wheelhouse, is to drive the narrative by design. So the narratives that reach us, and we should all recognize this. When you go into X and you see what people are talking about, none of that is by accident. And that's the crazy thing. Like, even the things that you and I talk about, it's not really by accident. Like, we are really being manipulated at such a deep level. It's shocking to me.
That will reach everybody, because if the media doesn't want to cover it, don't worry about it. We'll get it out to everybody. But if we make the people.
Okay. All right. So that's, you can see that they're clearly inciting. I mean, this was Jason Sullivan was clearly inciting, and this was specifically to many of the people that got caught up in all the craziness on just 4 years ago today. And a lot of what he's saying there, Ivan Raiklin was actually talking about too. This is Luis, Correspondent X, found this video.
Yeah, January 6th, every single person in here needs to let all their network know that you need to be in DC on January 6th. Yep. Because we're gonna be cranking up the burners. Yeah, January 6th. Yeah, January 6th, every single person in here needs burners, and we'll see.
So I don't know if this was either right before or right after that conference call. I would wager just about anything that Ivan Raiklin was on that call.
See how long these rhinos are going to take to boil, because on January 6th, it's going to be 212 degrees. It's up to them to have it continue to go to 212 degrees and beyond, or to lower the burners down so that they don't get burned.
I mean, that is really, that's hardly even veiled. That is an incitement to violence. He's talking about raising the temperature, getting people aggravated and irritated and angry, bringing the temperature up, he says, to 212 degrees so that these rhinos are going to boil alive. Diesel says, how many of Flynn's followers do y'all think are MK Ultra? I'd be interested in your guys's. I mean, that's just, you could just speculate. I think a lot of the people close to him, the digital soldiers, the former special op guys, I think a lot of them were. I actually saw a direct message from that 17th scumbag guy to Gray Monarch that he sent me, and 17th scumbag said that they all were MK Ultra. They all were abused. But he might have just been saying that to try to, gain favor with Gray Monarch, or, because he thought that that's what Gray Monarch wanted to hear. I don't know. And he acknowledged that too. So, but he did, 17th scum did say that they all were. So, all right. So, I want to share just these two clips, and this is thanks to True Cheetos posted these today, and I thought that this was just kind of some great context for this.
Planned for, and I have executed the takeover of countries around the world. I've been part of it.
Yeah, so he's admitting, and I mean, this is part of the public record. I mean, it's very clear that as the head of JSOC and what he was doing in Iraq, as the head of special operations, he was running psychological operations. They were planning for and taking over countries around the world, but he's just admitting it. That's exactly what they did. And this interview right here with Ivan Raiklin, he's talking about that training and how it actually works.
That we go through is in order to go into another country, link up with an indigenous population and force, train, advise, and equip it so that we flip their government, meaning train insurgents to overthrow a government so that the government then becomes friendly with the United States in their own language.
Is that how they took out Muammar Gaddafi?
Okay. So I forget that guy's name that's interviewing, but he's an idiot. He does funny stuff, but he's an idiot. He doesn't ask good questions. So anyways, he's saying that they go in, they train insurgents to go in and take over the country from the inside, and that's exactly what they've done to the state Republican parties across the country. That's exactly what they did to the election integrity movement. That's exactly what they did to this country and to J6. Now, when I look at everything that happened there on J6, this is something that had to have taken months to prepare for. I mean, looking like here in Michigan at the Republican Party, it took months for them to prepare for a convention. And there's so many moving parts, so many different organizations. Ivan Raiklin had two different radios, one in each hand, talking. There were different groups that they were radioing with. There was coordination with, from Caroline Wren and with the stage to, making sure that Trump actually got out and spoke that day, to Jason Sullivan talking to these people, to Ivan Raiklin with Operation Pence Card, which I'm going to let him explain in just a minute, as he did today with Donny, whatever his name is, with CNN, who incidentally, this is, just a good contrast to kind of have in mind. I was DMing with someone today that said that, Donny's the same one that Jeff from In the Matrix, the MG show, interviewed. And when he interviewed Jeff was, that it was very constructive, and Jeff shared, positive information that actually painted Q and painted Trump and MAGA in the best possible light that he could. He had a rational response to every question. But that's not what happened today. And we're going to see this. This is going to be all over the media if it isn't already. And so I think this is something that we need to watch now and kind of be prepared for to some extent. And so I kind of cut together, this is I shared it on X. It's about 35 minutes. I definitely recommend watching the whole thing, but I cut it down to about, I don't know, 13 minutes or so that were kind of the choice parts, because he talks a lot and he steamrolls.
Who do you think was ultimately responsible for the attack on the Capitol 4 years ago today, here in DC?
So I would say probably me. I'm the one. And
okay. He's just admitting, he's just saying he's taking credit for organizing it. And I think, while he's being braggadocious and completely arrogant, he is also being honest to a degree. I mean, he's taking more credit than he deserves, because this is a big, complicated team effort. I mean, there were congressmen that were involved in this. I mean, it was a big coordinated thing. But so he can't claim complete credit, but he does claim credit. He says that I'm the one that's responsible. And what that really means is that Flynn's responsible. That's really what that means. If Ivan Raiklin was responsible, he was working directly for Flynn. I mean, he was wearing a Flynn face mask there on J6, and he's on the board of directors for America's Future. And, he was traveling all around the country on the bus tour with Flynn. He is under Flynn in every way on the org chart. And so if Ivan Raiklin was responsible for the violence, like he just admitted, that means that Flynn is responsible. It's a big deal.
Here's why. Because when I laid out, that's the first strategy. When Mike Pence did not listen to that.
So wait, you're saying you are responsible for the Capitol attack?
Yeah, and I'll explain how and why. Absolutely, I've said this numerous times. Back to your question.
But just strikes me.
My responsibility in January 6th is as such. I was communicating to, listen, Kevin McCarthy. You heard of him?
Mm-hmm.
Kevin McCarthy directly, who was the Republican senior official. He was the minority leader at the time. But under the 12th Amendment framework, if there's a contingent election, the states vote by delegation, right? You know that? But if you don't understand that, go talk to your boy Kyle Cheney at Politico. He understands it better than any other mainstream disinformation.
Oh, he's so hard to listen. He's just so condescending and arrogant. But and he's acting like he's all, peaceful and he's so condescending and arrogant. But and not that Donnie's a great guy or that he has good intentions or whatever. But yeah, so what he's saying is that, and he's describing what Operation Pence Card was, which was he was pushing it and promoting it to Mark Short, who was Mike Pence's chief of staff, and he says that during the course of this interview, and it was this idea that Trump had the constitutional authority to actually and what he's saying, what Ivan Raiklin is saying, is to force the House of Representatives to actually override the vote of the people, and to do so on a delegation basis, which the Constitution does say that can happen. But even if it's constitutional, that would create a constitutional crisis, because he talks about precedent, but that's not a precedent that we would have wanted the Democrats to follow today. It is not a precedent. This is not a precedent that a peace-loving people would engage in. But that's what he was promoting, and that's not exactly what Trump understood from and Trump's people talked about when they were talking about the possibility of working with Pence and having Pence delay certification, which is what they were going to do, as there was more of an investigation. And the whole point to the alternate electors and all of that was to create enough time and space to do enough of an investigation to find the fraud and to find out if there was fraud. And of course, it would never have been found, just like it wasn't found in the Arizona audit, because the rules would be intentionally manipulated for the audit, and because it's very complicated how it was done. It was not in the machines, so a hand recount would not have found it. It was very complicated and very complex. Because once the ballots are in, because they used regular ballots, and the only way that it could have been found, I believe, was through a very careful and extensive door-to-door canvas, and those it's there was not enough of that done because it's very labor intensive. But
and I say that with good faith.
Ivan, I guess,
and because I presented that, I'm going to give you the answer that you don't know and no one else understands. I presented that to Kevin McCarthy, a plan, as well as to Mike Pence's chief of staff, Mark Short, directly, both of them. And I said, hey guys, on January 6th, you need to vote by state delegation on the objections to the states. And if they did that, then it would have been a Republican win, because 27 states were Republican, 21, I believe, Democrat, and then there were 2 or 3 tied up based on delegation. And so had they ran that, it would have been forcing a contingent election, thus a re-election of Trump. So when Nancy Pelosi and her, Terry McCullough, Jamie Fleet, and her staff, these are names that you should know.
Okay, so this is where the lies are. He's going to pour on some serious lies right here. So just get ready for this.
When they caught wind of this, they had to tell the Paul Irvings of the world, the House Sergeant at Arms, who was John Boehner's and Paul Ryan's Sergeant at Arms before he became Nancy Pelosi's Sergeant at Arms. And he told Chief Sund, hey, due to optics, we're not going to provide you protection.
That is such a complete and total lie. It was Charlie Flynn that said that. It was Charlie Flynn that said, due to optics, we're not going to send out the National Guard. Multiple military whistleblowers have said that to Congress under penalty of perjury. And, if they were making untrue statements, and multiple did, and they all corroborated each other. And it was Charlie Flynn and, I'm blanking on the other name. But there were 2, and Charlie Flynn was one of them. And he is just completely lying here. He's saying that it was the House Sergeant of Arms that said that. Complete and total. This is a bald-faced lie to cover for Flynn right here. And I believe that this is a big part of the reason why Charlie Flynn just suddenly, thank you, Joe, General Piat. So it was Piat and Charlie Flynn that said it would be bad optics. And so again, Ivan Raiklin is lying. He is saying that it was the House Sergeant of Arms that said it would be bad optics, so we can't send it to the National Guard. There's a complete and total bald-faced lie by Ivan Raiklin to cover for Charlie Flynn.
Even though Donald Trump and acting Secretary of Defense Chris Miller said that.
But so when
you have National Guard support, and they denied U.S. Capitol Police. So my legal strategy forced Nancy Pelosi to conduct the deliberate breach and facilitate the deliberate incited entrapment of January 6th. That is why I'm responsible, because my plan for the legal constitutional process to correct and remedy the illegal, illegitimate, stolen, completely lawless election of 2020 due to the COVID measures, my play was the only legal play through parliamentary maneuvering under the 12th Amendment and the gaps in knowledge of the Electoral Count Act. Yeah. That's when Nancy Pelosi sprung into action to facilitate the breach through her Sergeant at Arms and deliberately have people go ahead and breach the Capitol.
Okay, so that second part, that doesn't make any sense at all. So that Nancy Pelosi had people deliberately breach the Capitol? I mean, no, it was Jason Sullivan, like we just saw. It was an inside job. This wasn't Nancy Pelosi that had people breach the Capitol because they didn't do what Ivan Raiklin said. I mean, there is a grain of truth in that he does have responsibility, because he was pushing this whole idea, and Trump actually retweeted the Operation Pence card, which was completely Ivan Raiklin's brainchild. But no, it is not it's not just Nancy Pelosi creating this, along with that she's the mastermind of this whole thing, that she wasn't directing the FBI and Antifa and the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers. The Proud Boys, that many of whom were very close to the Flynn network and even to Flynn himself, like James Howell in Sarasota County, that ended up running alongside Mike Flynn for the executive committee in Sarasota County Republican Party afterwards. And then you've got the Oath Keepers and Proud Boys going on Patrick Byrne's private jet. There's so many so many points showing, okay, that there was a lot of involvement here. But Ivan Raiklin saying, hey, this is my thing, I'm responsible, that means Flynn's responsible. We cannot let him get away with that. That he is admitting that Flynn was responsible for the setup on January 6th.
Working with your girl Yogananda Pittman, the head of Intel and Interagency Coordination Division of the U.S. Capitol Police, who you should know everything about, but you don't. So January 6th was the Fedsurrection response to my legal constitutional proposal to guarantee a Trump re-election, lawful re-election.
Okay, so is it lawful to guarantee a Trump re-election even if they can't find proof of fraud? I think that is a very fair question. I don't think that we want that. I don't want that precedent to be set. Because if the Republicans were to do that, the Democrats would do it too. We don't want to live in that kind of country. I do not want to live in the kind of country that, and under the imaginary constitution that the so-called constitutional attorney Ivan Raiklin describes.
On January 6th of 2021, okay? So Nancy Pelosi and everybody involved in the following cover-up to that must face maximum just and lawful punishment in the most legal, moral, and ethical manner known.
So he's pointing to his Department of Retribution t-shirt saying that everybody involved needs to face maximum punishment. But he just admitted that he was involved. Patrick said, did he just say Fedsurrection? Yeah, that's what he says. He says like FB lie. He calls the FBI FB lie and whatever. That's just his way of being.
Okay. Some examples of what that looks like is I like to use precedent. Okay. So I want to incorporate the precedent that we saw what happened to Roger Stone when you and your colleagues went ahead and worked with your boy Andy McCabe to go ahead and say, hey, look, Roger Stone is about to be raided, swatted, live stream swatting raid, and hauled in, okay? And in the process, you might very well see objectively reasonable conduct take place on every single person on my category known as J6.
Okay. I just want to step back to a couple comments. Joe says, from the J6 report, waiting for guard support, what did Major General Walker think was happening in those 3 hours and 19 minutes? He said delay. Delay was what was happening, which is, yeah, it's a really good point. And yeah, he does the little merch drop, doesn't he, Patrick? Scorpio Saga says, I really dislike Ivan. He's so condescending 100% of the time. I can't wait until he gets the karma he deserves. It's interesting. Maybe you've watched the video because he does talk about karma. So let's go on.
Of the deep state target list. And what I mean by objectively reasonable conduct, I'm talking about what your girl Metropolitan Police Department officer Lila Morris did to Roseanne Boylan on January 6th outside the Capitol. Or your boy U.S. Capitol Police officer Michael Byrd, what he did to Ashley Babbitt on January 6th.
So what you think?
Okay, so he's saying that it would be what he's just said. This is his exact words. It would be objectively reasonable to return to do the same precedent, to follow the same precedent that was committed against Boylan and Ashley Babbitt on January 6th, which was murder. With Ashley Babbitt, I know there's a lot of people that think that she's still alive. I don't buy into that. You can think it if you want to, but what he's saying, even just for the sake of the argument right here, just ignore that for a minute. he's saying that Ashley Babbitt was shot in the throat and murdered in cold blood. And so that precedent is now available to us. He's claiming, this is, again, he claims to be a constitutional attorney. He's claiming, and this is just such garbage. There's nothing at all in the Constitution that supports this. He is a liar and a grifter and a scumbag. This is not the Constitution of the United States that he's talking about. It might be the Constitution of the Nazi Party or the Constitution of the Soviet Union, where his parents were born. But this is not the Constitution of the United States that he is talking about here, where you can just do an eye for an eye. That is not the kind of country that I think any of us want to live in. But that is what he's claiming. He just said it. He said it would be objectively reasonable for us to shoot people in cold blood. Oh, shoot. I lost my spot. I apologize. I clicked the wrong button.
I'm talking about what your girl, Metropolitan Police Department officer Lila Morris, did to Roseanne Boylan on January 6th outside the Capitol. Or your boy, U.S. Capitol Police Officer Michael Byrd, what he did to Ashley Babbitt on January 6th.
So what you think?
We're going to investigate those types of things, and we may have objectively reasonable conduct of our own to conduct on everyone on that list.
Of our own. So who is our here? Who is we? That is the big question, because it's not Trump. It's not the federal government. He is not going to get, this. There's no Department of Retribution, and there's no Secretary of Retribution. So, this is all imaginary on his part. He is not going to represent our government in this way, to be judge, jury, and executioner. Bobby G says, incorporate the precedent of Roger Stone all staged to create that precedent, which is an excellent point. There's this kind of circular whole thing that's going on here. They create the precedent and then they cry about the precedent, right? Oh my gosh. This is it's terrible. Shannon, Shady Grooves, so good to see you. Boy, oh boy, this sure is interesting watching Ivan think everyone is stupid. Yeah. That is exactly what he's doing. Everybody but Ivan. It's tough to live in such a world where you're so much smarter than everybody else, isn't it? Natalie says Ivan's just talking like someone who is interviewing him isn't asking questions. Right. Because because he's the smartest one in the room, he's got to be in control.
You mentioned Pelosi. What do you think she would be charged with in this scenario?
It's a simple statute. This is treason. Yeah, absolutely. And I would like to see at the end of the due process, lawful capital punishment. It would be such karma for a senior official such as herself, that is a office holder of the Capitol with an O, to face capital punishment with an A.
Okay, so don't gloss over this. This is so shocking. This actually, this kind of gets my adrenaline going. He's talking to CNN. Okay. This is going to be everywhere in the media. This is if they don't parrot this, they will. I mean, they will. And they're going to say that this is because he's claiming, and later on, he's making statements that seem to imply that he's talking to Trump's team or Kash Patel, and maybe he is talking to Kash Patel. I would not be surprised. Because he spent a lot of time with Kash Patel at the Reawaken Tour events. I'm certain he's got his cell phone number. But yeah, it would be surprising to me if Kash Patel would talk to him. But we're falling into the realm of speculation. But he just said to CNN, and acting as if he represents all of MAGA and Trump world, he just said that the former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, needs to be tried for treason and publicly executed. That's what he just said. This is not good. This is something that was clearly designed to hurt Trump. This is the timing, everything. This is This is not the kind of thing that you just say accidentally. And there is nothing, you look at there's nothing accidental about it. He didn't just have a slip of the tongue. He delivered. This is all a plan. This is an op right here that he's running. Joe says, watch out, Shady. You'll end up on the deep state target list. Yeah, and maybe all of us will be, right? I say bring it, Ivan. Bring it. Spilty T says, I'm holding out cash as a double agent for Trump. And I certainly hope so. I'm with you on that. I certainly hope so. All right, so let's go on. There's
now, Ivan, respectively, like obviously a lot of people watching
and
this.
Jamie Ratskin as well.
People watching this.
Because he wants civil war conditions today.
Remember that? People watching this.
Remember his phrase, civil war conditions?
What do you say to the audience at home? Not all the audience, but
he's saying that, I mean, it's so obvious he wants civil war. I mean, how could anyone who say that they supports Trump be speaking the way that he's speaking right now? This is not like this. This is not. I mean, he's crying fire in a crowded theater. That is exactly what Ivan Raiklin is doing right here. I think that this is borderline falling beyond the realm of protected speech. He is actually he's calling out for civil war. He is saying this to CNN, knowing, I think he's wanting to incite Democrats to try to pick up their guns and to do stupid stuff. He's trying to, just like what he was talking about before January 6th, he's trying to get the water to boil. He's bringing up the temperature. If you support Trump, you're going to try to bring down the temperature right now. You're going to be happy because the guy that you voted for his election was just certified, and in 2 weeks he's going to be the president. Anyone who shares what Ivan Raiklin said here, anyone who speaks publicly and positively about what Ivan Raiklin just said here, they do not support Trump. And I think that's a good thing that we could do, is to find them, name them, and shame them, and show who they are. Anybody who speaks positively about Ivan Raiklin, and especially about what he just did today, this is complete. Mike Flynn, if Mike Flynn does not fire him from America's future, this is just, I'm lost for words. Kat says, isn't Flynn doing a J6 event? Yeah, they did this J6 event today, and I think that I don't know if this was there, or I don't know where this was exactly that they ran into each other, but he was speaking at that event.
People watching this at home will say, oh my God, this guy is saying they should execute the former Speaker of the House. He's an extremist. What's your response to that?
I'm being diplomatic. I'm being diplomatic and very restrained in my rhetoric, in my dialogue, and in my actions. And I say to them, why don't you go ahead and review the Twitter files? And why? Okay, this guy is a sociopath. I mean, he's a psychopath, and this is not normal behavior. This is not healthy behavior whatsoever. Spilty says they would have to believe that we believe, so we would too. It's something I continue to observe closely. I trust Trump, though. Perhaps the actual application of Sun Tzu. And you might be. Oh, you're continuing a previous statement. I'm sorry, where you said Trump would have to have someone on the inside to keep tabs on them. Not to mention give them comfort. They had aligned to Trump. So. And Kat says, I don't know how anyone can listen to the sociopath. He really, truly is. So but it gets better. So I think this is important. It's kind of like ripping off the Band-Aid. I think we've got to listen. Why don't you go ahead and take a look at what is well, they don't know it yet. But I would venture to say starting on January 20th. By the way, have you seen the two reports that were just released by Congressman Loudermilk of the Subcommittee on Oversight? House Administration Committee? That is the tip of the iceberg of what's going to be released. The cover-up that took place is just as bad
as the actual deliberate breach of the Capitol that Nancy Pelosi was responsible for.
Are you?
Yeah. So the thing is that he's involved in that cover. He engaged in that cover up just now by lying about Charlie Flynn's, covering up for Charlie Flynn's involvement in saying it would be bad optics. I mean, he's engaged in that cover up right now. This is all right. Hey Don, it's good to see you. And Booma says, I don't know why Trump doesn't denounce, and this is a really good point. Why does Trump doesn't denounce this talk now that the election is over? This will all be used against him. And it's exactly right. And that, I hope, is the silver lining for this. I really, truly hope and pray that Trump just strongly denounces this and uses this to say, I have nothing to do with Ivan Raiklin. I have nothing to do with Mike Flynn. These people are, they need to be investigated.
This destroyed and ruined 1,600 individuals and families just as defendants, not to mention when good old Benny Boy Thompson, the chair of both the Homeland Security Committee and the chair of the January 6th, I call it the Mike Pence's beloved Liz Cheney and Nancy Pelosi's beloved Benny Thompson's January 6th Fedsurrection Cover-Up Committee. Okay? So when Benny Thompson contacted Ali Mayorkas,
Were you interviewed by J6 committee?
I begged them to interview me, but guess what? When you know and have dirt on all of them, they don't want to be, they don't want to call me in, do they?
When
I begged them. They mentioned my name during the third hearing.
When you look at,
I have a feeling that's not exactly how it played out.
But because I would run circles around them. I know that sounds humble because it is.
when you are you confident there will be retribution under the Trump administration?
For the Bureau folks and the FISA court that's illegally surveilling my phone, you know who I'm talking to. And based on who I've been talking to lately, my confidence level only increases daily because I talk to a lot of people.
I say he's got that crazy smile, and this is where he's implying, to me, the way I read this is that he's implying that he's talking with Trump's team. Spilty says Trump already knows timing is everything, and yeah, I think. And Diesel said that Scavino pretty much said that. And I was actually told too. I've mentioned that back in June, when I exposed what Shelby Bush was doing in Arizona with the training delegates to the national convention on how to suspend the rules of the convention, place a new candidate into nomination, and I was briefly in contact with Trump's team. I was actually told at that time, because they asked me, well, what's the end game? And I said, well, are you familiar with Ivan Raiklin? And there was no hesitation immediately. Yes. And it was the kind of yes, like, I wish I didn't have to, and that it was clear that they were not favorably disposed to him. I'll say that.
And I provide a lot of evidence. And it's not only at the federal level, just like when you saw your colleague from the National Poison Radio.
Yeah. What evidence, really? I really, truly, what evidence? I mean, everything that Ivan Raiklin talks about is in the public record. He does not share anything that you can't glean from a Google search. What evidence, Ivan? All you have is a bunch of arrogant, proud talk and accusations and threats and violent rhetoric. That's really all Ivan Raiklin has. He does not have evidence.
Approach me after the weaponization committee hearing, Zoe Chase. You know her?
I don't.
Yeah, take a look at that video. About 18 minutes. You probably saw that one. Went a little viral. Probably got more views than what you guys get in a year. But I'll say this.
Original.
Is that, I mean, it's true. Is that what part of retired Lieutenant Colonel Green Beret and constitutional lawyer did Jackass Smith fail to understand? And what did he fail to understand, as well as everyone on my deep state target list?
Yeah, so you have a
when people think that I'm just, this is a troll move, this is that, this is this, they don't believe me. Well, I'm going to refer you back and take a look. How many people do you know that say, I'm going to run 1,776 miles through every county and city in Virginia, 22 miles a day over the course of an 81-day period? They have to be And the way we get there is that it's not going to be coming through you. You're just providing me a venue to be held to account. It's not about like, oh, they should, they have to be. And the way we get there is that it's not going to be
saying they have to be held to account.
Coming through you. You're just providing me a venue to educate those critical thinkers on X, to include Elon Musk, to go ahead and hear this out and be like, oh, wow, Ivan's done.
He is so wide. Elon has got to just despise him. He's like this nasty, annoying mosquito that just keeps stinging him and buzzing around his ear. And he's constantly appealing to Elon Musk to provide the Twitter files, and that Elon's got all the evidence. And it sounds a lot like Mike Gill or anybody, other people that say, I've got all the evidence, I'm going to release it all, and then it's going to change the whole world. That's not the way evidence works. That's just not the way evidence works. If evidence is clear, then it'll draw people to spur further investigation. And if we have just prosecution and law enforcement, then it'll result in criminal investigations if that warrants it.
His research, he's done a little bit due diligence. Oh wow, his sources are actually the best sources that you can even think of to be able to put forth this information. It's not like
if I meet you here in 12 months, what do you hope, and what do you hope this looks like in 12 months time when it comes to retribution?
Yeah, so your girl Julie Farnham is already, she's a former number 2 at Intel and Interagency Coordination
What do you
Division
think?
at U.S. Capitol. She's already obtaining her dual citizenship just like you, so you have an opportunity to flee, right?
Where's she going?
You can flee to Ireland.
Where's she going?
And she's going to Italy. Who else?
I fled here.
Good old, Mark Zaid? The lawyer? Your boy, Mark Zaid? He's advising his clients of the 51 spies who lied. You might want to leave the country on or about January 20th. I think that's pretty sound advice.
Really, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. But it doesn't matter where you are on the planet. We have a kind of long arm reach due to personal jurisdiction.
So I've talked about Mark Zaid quite a bit, because I believe that Mark Zaid and Flynn actually have a secret connection with each other, and it's secret because they're on opposite sides of the political spectrum, at least in appearance. They're playing, they're LARPing opposite sides of the political spectrum, and Mark Zaid is actually Ezra Cohen Watnick's attorney, and from what I understand, Ezra Cohen Watnick is pretty close to Cash, and he's also very close to Flynn. In fact, I've been told that likely after Flynn left, at least early on, through Trump's presidency, Ezra Cohen Watnick was likely working to some extent as Flynn's handler, or one of his handlers, along with Michael Ledeen for sure. And again, Ezra Cohen Watnick's attorney is Zaid. So, but Zaid is also very close. He's a spy attorney, and he works with very closely and publicly with a lot of these people on the left, and a lot of these 51 members of when he talks about the 51, these are the people that signed this letter claiming that Hunter Biden's laptop was a fake.
Of all these people, I mean, unless it'll have to be quite creative depending on where people flee to.
Would you be disappointed if in 12 months from now somebody hasn't been hung for treason or executed for treason?
Will I be disappointed? I think the nation will be furious if that does not happen. Because the information that I expect Elon.
Okay, so this is exactly what the goal, the objective, I think, of the whole Flynn network is to make the nation furious, to make the nation this just rabid, angry, we need the death penalty. And that's where, I said earlier, we need to be very careful about the accusation of treason. And this is one of the things that they do in the Flynn network very frequently, is they call everybody a traitor. And do I believe that Flynn is a traitor? Do I believe that he's committed treason? I think very likely, but I don't have the evidence to convict him of that in a court of law. I believe that the evidence could surface if there were an extensive enough investigation. But I don't have the evidence. I mean, you'd have to have direct evidence, admissible evidence into court. And, there's plenty in the public record that suggests that provides reasonable suspicion. And that is what I have, is reasonable suspicion. That to me is pretty beyond most reasonable doubt. But Shady says very similar to what Alex Jones does and has always done. Exactly, 100%. And we know that Alex Jones, Raglan, Flynn, they're all close. They're all the same circle. It's not, when I say Flynn Network, I don't mean like a pyramid type structure where Flynn is at the apex. I think that it's more of like an NGO kind of structure, where there's different NGOs and groups that are all moving in a parallel path. And Flynn is kind of like a figurehead that is able to go around, that they all respect and love and admire and worship. Lauren, so good to see you. Lauren says, listen, I'm part of the nation. I am not interested in what Ivan has suggested, because if we go down that path, it is very hard to come back. And I don't know that we ever would. I think it would be the end of this nation. I clicked the wrong button. Sorry. I'm guessing as to where we were here.
And guess what? As we provide that to district attorneys to the tune of 2,500 throughout the country that are now going to have the courage, because of a President Trump in office, they're going to go ham on everyone involved in the.
Okay, so what he's saying here is that Elon is going to drop the Twitter files, and we're going to have all the evidence, and it's going to be like opening Pandora's box, and everything's going to be different after the evidence is there. And now there's going to be no going back. But then he says we're going to get it to all the 2,500 district attorneys. What 2,500 district attorneys is he talking about? He's talking about in red states and counties, and in red counties. And this really relates to what I've been talking about also, which is the way that Flynn talks about deploying his national or local action, national impact strategy through Citizens Defending Freedom and its project, the Remnant Alliance, where they're infiltrating churches with, they're targeting churches, Catholic churches, Protestant churches, all different kinds of churches, infiltrating churches with human intelligence resources to spy on the local communities, to engage in lawfare against who they determine to be nefarious actors, which would be people like me and people like you if you speak out against them, and anybody that opposes them, because that's exactly the way they work. They've done this in state Republican parties. It is exactly how they work. Everybody that disagrees with them on anything is a demon, is satanic, is evil. And if they're evil and they're not even human, they're a demon, then what can't you justify doing to them? And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get this local furor and fury over what is going on, so that we're trying to take the law into our own hands. This is the flavor of what everything that the Flynn Network has been working on. Lauren says, yeah, and he's difficult to watch. Self-righteous, taunting smugness is, he's grotesque, right?
COVID pandemic and the cover-up there too, which will include your or many individuals in your organization. I'm not sure yet if you are or are not on the deep state target list, because I haven't consumed all of the information that you've put forth. Defamation is only one thing. We're going to go after you if you participate in the distribution of false information that caused the death of folks because they ended up taking the clot shot, known as the jab, known as the DNA mutilation injection.
Again, what Trump wants. Trump has said repeatedly that Trump has the potential to unite this country, to be, he talks about common sense. He's talking about representing all the people, not just the ones who voted for him. But what Ivan Raiklin is doing right here is he just told a major CNN reporter that everyone who promoted the vaccine is deserving of punishment, and the punishment that he's been talking about is execution, and like the public grabbing their pitchforks and demanding and taking the law into their own hands. And he is deliberately trying to incite a civil war. Bear with me here. We're almost done.
Or were injured from it.
The vaccine.
You're not going to be absolved from that. We're going to come for Pfizer. We're going to come for Moderna. We're going to come for J&J. And then we're going to come for every single disinformation purveyor, to include criminal news networks.
He is doing everything he can, because the media is actually, there's been some element of giving Trump the benefit of the doubt. The media has not been super harsh against Trump. If Trump does not condemn him, I mean, the media is going to make this association anyways. Say, Trump supporter Ivan Raiklin, or Flynn, and this is MAGA. These people are MAGA. And they just had this J6 rally calling for, they're trying to release their people but imprison everybody else. This is political persecution. And he's actually telling the CNN reporter that their lives, that he wants the journalists, he wants the media, the mainstream media, to actually believe that this is a matter of life and death. That's exactly what he's putting out there.
That were involved in the false, manipulated information scheme. Why? Because guess what? One of your major sponsors is what? Brought to you by what, sir? Some of the organizations that I just mentioned.
Pfizer.
Your scheme, like, I would be lawyering up if I were you. Seriously. If you think that you were involved in it.
So it's a good challenge. We're going to be here all day.
There'll be different levels of retribution.
Yeah.
Right? Some will face capital punishment, and some will just face jail time. And some will face live stream swatting raids, and maybe the evidence won't show that you did anything wrong. And maybe you'll just be held in confinement for 4 years, like Jake Lang, as we deliberate.
Like Jake Lang, who swung a steel baseball bat at police officers. So he, oh my gosh, this is just unbelievable. How could any reasonable person side with him? I mean, he's saying that maybe we'll do a live swatting raid on you, Donnie, and every other reporter in the country. Maybe we'll just grab our pitchforks at 4 o'clock in the morning and our AK-47s and AR-15s, and we'll do our live swatting raids, and we'll put it all on Facebook and X and YouTube live stream, and we'll arrest you and throw you in prison, and then we'll find out that we don't have enough evidence for you, but we'll just let you sit in prison for 4 years like you did to Jake Lang. That's exactly what he just said. I'm not even putting words in his mouth. Aside from the AK-47s, the AR-15s, he didn't say that. Oh my gosh. And Natalie says this looks totally staged, all the way down to Ivan's stage makeup. He does almost look like he's wearing makeup, doesn't he? And Spilty says, if you watch the beginning of this, it all appears staged and planned in this interview. And that's actually a really good point. Even from the very beginning, how they're all kind of just like friendly with each other. It's like, oh, hey, fancy to meet you here. He is a complete and total psycho. I promise we just have a few more seconds, and then it ends strong.
Right? To determine what your status should be.
Well, we've been hanging out.
As we ruin you.
As you what?
Just like you ruined us. An eye for an eye. Look up Leviticus as a Christian.
Look up Leviticus as a Christian. So not only that, he's trying to defame Christ and Christianity and the church. This is, I mean, that just look at him. Just look. He is a psychopath. He's a psychopath. Didn't Trump denounce retribution in a recent tweet? I'm not sure. Gemini says Donnie's done some great reporting over the years to really talk to families. He went to families' homes and has interviewed Ivan as Pete Cringe. He's beyond cringe. And this is not, there's nothing conservative, there's nothing Republican, there's nothing MAGA, there's nothing. He is not on our side, and Flynn is not on our side for even just for associating with him. But you got to remember that Flynn rewarded Ivan Raiklin for the same exact kind of talk with Zoe Chase that went super viral, and that's how Ivan Raiklin became kind of a household name. was with that video. And 2 weeks, it was just 2 to 3 weeks after that video came out and it went viral. Immediately, Flynn said everybody in America needs to watch that video where he's talking about citizens engaging in live swatting raids against Ivan's deep state target list that, of course, conveniently doesn't include Flynn and Ivan Raiklin himself, who he just admitted that he was one of the planners and he's the one responsible for the violence on January 6th. Yeah, this is all just so mind-blowing. And so Flynn rewarded Raiklin with a position, a paid position on the board of directors for America's Future for going viral. He rewarded him for this exact behavior that he is displaying right now. And so it is very clear that Flynn condones this behavior. Very, very clear. Unless Flynn immediately fires him and disassociates himself from him, which maybe he'll do. Maybe he's so desperate for a position in Trump's administration that he'll actually sacrifice Ivan Raiklin. That'd be something to watch, right? Gemini says he had to have known Donnie was coming. Donnie was with Lindell just a few months ago. Yeah, it's very likely. Never interfere with an enemy while he's in the process of destroying himself. Yeah, everything about him is opposed to what Trump is saying and talking about. A Flynn cider. That's a good one. That's a good one. And Spilty says, in the Matrix did a great interview with Donnie. There was no wrap-up smears. He gave them nothing to smear. 100% integrity. In fact, the Flynn network screamed about it. And now this, and that's a great point, Spilty, is that, you know, the Flynn network and all of their digital soldiers, all these lunatics, were all over. They were just harassing and slandering Jeff over going on CNN and talking to Donnie. And yet here is their lieutenant here, their hero, Ivan Raiklin, really just making a mess out of for Trump. I mean, this is just such a huge, terrible mess. And yeah, it is so ugly. So I think, you know, just to kind of conclude, I've got we talked about Caroline Wren and how she took over the stage and the how she really wrangled, possibly with the help of Liz Cheney. She was able to take the permit for January 6th away from Cindy Chaffian, who was going to hold the event at the at Freedom Plaza, and Caroline Wren and Kylie and Amy Kramer took it away from Cindy so that they could hold it at the Ellipse. It would not have been held at the Ellipse had they not done that. You know, if it had not been held at the Ellipse, Trump would not have spoken that day, and it would have been really impossible for the media's narratives, their insurrection narratives, would have fallen so flat had Trump not spoken publicly that day. I mean, none of that would have happened. So that was the first thing I talked about, and then we talked about Jason Sullivan. We played this recording where he was very clearly inciting the militia organizations, telling them that he was providing a message from Trump directly, that Trump wanted them to go into Congress and to raise the shout of Jericho and to breathe down their necks and make them feel it and be prepared to die even. Then on January 6th, and this was on December 30th, just a week before January 6th, when he said these things on a call that included the Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, First Amendment Praetorian, the Friends of Stone, Friends of Roger Stone, which was a signal chat that included Ivan Raiklin, included Flynn, included Roger Stone, Patrick Byrne, all of those. It was kind of like Stone's inner network. They were on the call, according to the New York Times, and they had credible evidence to support that claim. There was somebody that had been in that signal group that testified to that to them, and so yeah, and then other organizations, other Flynn orgs like Latinos for Trump, which is now headed by Mike Flynn Jr.'s girlfriend, and other Moms for America, and these the March for America, March to Save for America, or whatever the organization that the Krabies started, which was very weird that they started an organization in early December called like the Save America March, I think was the name of their organization. Because they knew that there was going to be a march to the Capitol. I mean, I think that this was planned for months in advance, long before the election. And what we need, all of these people that are claiming that that we need blanket pardons for all J6ers. They happen to be the same ones, I believe, that were planning this whole thing. And they're desperately trying to avoid any investigation into how they planned it. And that is what we need. We need that from Kash Patel. And I pray that we get it. We need Trump to demand this kind of investigation into how it is that these things were done to so many Americans that were wrongly imprisoned and convicted and treated very unfairly and poorly, especially compared to the summer of love, the summer before, where people were actually committing acts of violence. And then yet you've got people like Jake Lang that are hailed as heroes, and it's just nonsense. It's nonsense. So thank you all for joining. I know this was a long one, but I think it's an important one. I think that everything that we shared was truly important, and I'm going to get Ivan Raiklin off the screen so you don't need to look at that psychopath anymore. But so thank you all for joining. This was a good one. I am going to have my members only podcast on Wednesday at 3 p.m. and it'll be live at Wednesday at 3 p.m. To join, just join my Substack at biggertruthmedia.com. That's biggertruthmedia.com. And I'm on X at biggertruth. Thank you, and have a blessed day, and just relax. Like, this stuff is terrible. It is horrible. I wish it hadn't happened, but Trump's election was certified today. We had all of the threats and everything that Flynn said was going to happen. Didn't happen. Trump's election has been certified, and Trump is going to be inaugurated. He's not going to have some secret Air Force One inauguration. He's going to have a public inauguration. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be inspiring, and it's going to bring this country together. So thank you all, and God bless you.